let us recognize this sacred space and honor the spirit within. We will breathe together for 3. And we'll sink down into that deep place where we find ourselves in the peace that we are seeking. Thank you. Lydia, do you have a reading for us today?
Yes. Now is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. It is in the reality of now, without past or future, that the beginning of the appreciation of eternity lies. Now is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. It is in the reality of now, without past or present, that the beginning of appreciation of eternity lies. What is heaven but a song of gratitude and love and praise by everything created to the source of its creation? What is heaven but a song of gratitude and love and praise by everything created to the source of its creation? Under his teaching, every relationship becomes a lesson in love. Under his teaching, everything becomes a lesson in love. To be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. To be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. And that's from A Course in Miracles. To be continued. Yay.
Making sure you get over the chords.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lydia. All right. Now we are going to be delighted by our music, and our music today is Carmen. So please, a round of applause.
Switching things up a little bit. I found it easier to hear my guitar if I'm out here in front of the speakers. And I also found it easier if I sit down. So bear with me while I get it ready. And here I go. Such an intimate setting. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
Check out that peacock thing.
I know.
Alrighty.
Better be hanging.
just a woman named after my mother. My old man named me a brilliant song. If dreams were lightning, thunder were desire, my house would have burnt down a long time ago. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing I can hold on to believe in this living is such a hard way to grow. Flies in the kitchen, you can hear them a buzzing, and I ain't done nothing since I woke up today. How the hell can a person go to work in the morning, come home in the evening and have nothing to say? I don't know how, I always got something to say. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing I can hold on to believe in this living is such a hard way to go. One more verse. When I was a young girl, I had me a cowboy. Wasn't much to look at, just a free rambling man. But that was a long time. Ain't it funny how time flies? The years, they just roll by like a broken down dam. Oh yeah. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just give me one thing I can hold on to believe in this living is such a hard way to go. To believe in this living is such a hard way to go.
Great job.
Yes, we are that lucky here at the Valley Spiritual Center. Yes, please, another round of applause for Carmen. All right, now it is my great delight and pleasure to introduce Kat. Kat speaks to us, once every 3 months or so, and she always brings such an inspiring message to help us along our journey, and that's what we're all doing. We're all trying to walk each other home. So please, welcome Kat.
'Tis the season.
All right. A little rearranging here. Which one's longer? This one or that one? You can go that one. Yeah, that been tied to its post. Carmen, psst. How do I get that one loose? It's been wrangled. That cowboy from a long time ago lassoed it.
Your brother, they look like half empty, the light was shining.
That's beautiful. Hang it up.
Ah, freedom. Okay. So today's talk is unexpectedly a plug for Carrie's intentional dirty poor classes. So I had to laugh about that afterwards. I was like, oh, and I'm glad she's here. So today's talk is about expectations. And this morning was really funny because I expected to get here at a certain time and then nothing was where I expected to find it. And I was just laughing myself silly all this morning about this. But you think about it and it's like, when you went to bed last night, did you actually spend the time to go, gosh, I hope I expect to wake up in the same place tomorrow morning? I mean, unless, there's something that might prevent you from waking up, you probably don't think about that. And you wake up and you don't even wonder that I was so worried I wasn't going to be here where I started this sleeping journey. And I had had a plant medicine journey, which showed me how, just the tip of this iceberg of this thought, of how deeply we are unaware of how much we are habituated to our expectations to the slightest degree of our daily living. Has anybody here been wondering if they're going to float out of their chair yet? No, because we're so habituated to expecting to stay firmly rooted to the earth that, except Ruth. Yeah. So, if everybody just started floating up at the ceiling, I think we'd all be a little surprised, because we don't expect that. So, how is it on our quote-unquote spiritual journey, how can we change these bigger expectations? I expect forgiveness. I expect to be worthy. I expect that I am going to be loved and that I expect that enlightenment is going to be blissful and I expect what enlightenment is going to be. If we can't even realize that how deeply in the quote-unquote mundane life we're in expectation. It's pretty far out when you start thinking about how much you take for granted. You just assume. And so expectations, it's really so much in spiritual teaching. The further you get into it, you realize how much is gray. There's no cut and dry definitions. And so expectations kind of starts backing itself into an assumption, which kind of starts backing itself into your history of experiences, which starts backing itself into what you truly believe. And it's all back there being held in darkness if you're not doing shadow work, which was my last talk on New Year's Eve. If you're not working on bringing things into the light or allowing things to be brought forward to the light to be seen, you got all that baggage. You probably look like Marley's ghost on the ethereal level, just, dragging all of this previous past stuff along with you and dragging that dark cave with you too, because you maybe don't want to look at it, you're not ready to look at it, you're not willing to look at it. But the only way that we progress forward, one way to release expectations is to look at them, become aware of them. And, I usually mention that, the teaching that has impacted me the most is through the guides that channel through Paul Selig. And they have 11 books out now, and there's this wonderful guy in one of the online groups, and you feed him one word, and he will go through and make an index out of all the books for you. Wow. It's intense, but I think it has something to do with having the books on Kindle. So it kind of makes it a little bit more accessible. But this column right here are the 11 books, and all of this is how many times the guides mention the word expect, expectancy, and expectation. They talk about it a lot in every single book. And if the guides are talking about it, then you have to get to the idea of, well, is it good? Is it bad? What is this whole game of expectation? Now, if you can hold it as an idea, neutral, we apply the good and the bad to it. We apply that perspective out of our experiences, out of our preferences. And so the guides, they use it, the guides have expectations. They're like, well, we expect that if you do these exercises, you're gonna see results. And that's like, oh, okay. But they also say, and maybe people in this room have heard other people say it to them, well, what did you expect? You got what did you expect you'd get? That's like the red flag of pay attention. It's like almost like your higher self coming down and saying, wake up. You had an expectation. You created your reaction to this. You created how you perceived this because you had an expectation that you weren't aware of. And it's trying to come out of that dark cave in the back from some old belief system, some old experience that you created a preference, a belief out of. So as we're, sitting there in expectation and somebody says, well, what'd you think you'd get? What'd you expect? The guys also say, you get what you expect, but you also expect what you get. It's another way to explain manifestation. So if you don't like what you're getting, if you don't like what's right in front of you in the moment, you get an opportunity to say, well, what did I expect? What is it in me that was thinking this was going to play out a little differently? Or that, why did I not like how it happened? Why did it exceed my expectations? We all like it when something exceeds our expectations. We're like, yes, that was fantastic. But when it doesn't, there's your good opportunity. There's your gold mine to say, there's something operating in that darkness. And I keep dragging it around with me. So you get to a point where it's like, everybody's like, oh, I want my life to be better. I want to be more successful. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace. I want to be well rested. I want. And it's like, well, why don't you get that? What's the expectation? Why are you in this state of wanting? It's like playing peekaboo, except you never look. It's like peekaboo. Willingness is starting to crack those fingers apart and look. I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to see where I think my stuff stinks. I'm willing to entertain that I might be wrong. Because the personality structure of the ego does not like to be wrong. And it will in turn try to make everybody else wrong. So that it can maintain its rightness in how it perceived a particular experience. Or how it's maintaining its trust in a system or a person who taught it a certain truth. Because we feel like that, we get the rug pulled out from under us when we're like, that's not working the way I thought. That's not working the way I was taught. So we go back into that we are willing to entertain a what if. What if? And this was a game I learned to play as a park ranger before I was anywhere close to being on a quote-unquote spiritual path. And I realized that going to work really kind of got me down some days because of how people behaved when they were out in nature. And, and then I started thinking, well, what if? What if they aren't dumb? They just have never been able to have anywhere remotely close to an experience that would allow them to behave differently. What if they aren't being malicious? What if they just got distracted and didn't follow through? What if something else came up and they really had to change and so they didn't get their fees paid?
or they forgot to clean up the rest of their garbage off the picnic table. And I realized when I start playing this what if game, and I'm willing to entertain a completely different perspective of what I had previously been habituated to, my mood started changing. And I wouldn't go home being so grumpy, going, oh my gosh, people are this and they're that, and ugh. So I started teaching my park aides to do that too, when they would start to grumble about how the public left the park and did this damage or whatever. And I'm like, well, but what if? And that's come in really handy. I've come to learn that that's part of this willingness. That's also part of developing that observer mind, which is an aspect of, it's a level of our consciousness, somehow between the personality self and the higher self. And it allows you to kind of bridge that gap where you get this independent view of how you are responding. What are your expectations? What are these memories that you hold as truth? What is your perspectives? What are your preferences? It gives you kind of this little neutralizing tool to look at it and not feel like you're gonna die if you look at your own stuff. You don't feel judged. It's just like saying, oh yeah, the carpet's blue. Oh yeah, I felt jealous. I mean, it's the equivalency of that kind of an emotional reaction. You get this nice neutral tool in your own head to look at your own actions and your behaviors. And as you develop, and the guides too, just this morning I was reading it and they said, right now, as people are shifting out of these darknesses that they've created for themselves and that they've inherited from other people being taught through life and aligning to these other untruths that people think are true. They said, as you're doing this, observance is the key action. To see it, to witness it, and to get to that spot where you can witness it with neutrality is amazing. But you go one step further, beyond that is to be witnessing it in love and in compassion. Those are the higher frequencies. But you kind of shift through this as a process. And so as we're learning to pay attention to what experience am I having right now where I have an expectation or a belief or something, and how did it affect me, and what's the effect going forward? So we have, well, I say affect, but you can say affect, but people interchange those two pronunciations. That's the one that starts with an A, and then effect starts with E. Difference between the two is an affect or affect is a verb. It's the influence. So how does your expectation influence how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're reacting? And then once that happens, what's the effect? You get it come back at you from the universe to say, well, I felt really jealous and so I said or did this, and this is how that person responded back to me. So with that observer mind working and being willing to let it work, allowing it to work. Allowance is like this next step after willingness. You allow it to bring that information through from your higher self. And so what's fun about this whole thing, and I've been thinking about it since my last talk, it had come up. And I was thinking, oh yeah, expectation, that'd be great. And so I've been thinking about this topic. Now, when you are into that stage of your, I'm very dedicated to shadow work, and that's what that talk was about. And that's just using any method, technique, whatever, to start allowing the light of your higher self to call things out of the darkness so that they feel safe to come forward because they're not being judged. They're being held in love and compassion. And some of these things, they've been wanting to come out and they're screaming at you, and it's like the universe keeps going, would you please pay attention to this lesson? You keep getting the same relationship over and over and over again, and when are you going to figure out you're the only constant? Oh my goodness. And so there's some things that keep roaring to the front of your life, the same lesson, the same theme, different players perhaps, but it wants to be out. It's like, please bring me into the light. So we have to allow that, but we start paying attention. And so I've had this idea of expectation on my mind for some time now. And in typical fashion, whatever's on your mind the most, it's gonna show up. So I got to have an experience of expectation to share with you. And even this morning, for 3 hours this morning, I was like, just lost in thought and downloading my own information and lessons out of it. But the last dirty pour that I did with Carrie, oh my shame. I promised people to see the ugliest painting ever, and here it goes.
No.
We thought that was amazing.
Well, cataclysm for sure. Cat's-aclysm. And I was looking at it as, and I'm like, I'm creating it, everybody's being all nice and supportive and everything. And I'm just like, that's the most god-awful thing I've ever made.
Oh, no.
I'm like, even 5-year-old me would have been like, oh, hell no. And I'm sitting there going, well, I could paint over it. What's really funny is that the intentional pour means you put an intention, you think of something, I am blank. And you create a little sigil out of it. Carrie walks us through the process, and then you draw the sigil on here, and then you do the pour on top. What I put on here was the guide's most powerful attunement, word, I am word. And what word is the energy of God in action. Word, I am word. Look at this piece of crap.
No.
Word, I am word. No.
Beautifully expressed.
But the thing is, when you get far enough along in your shadow work, the good and the bad, everything is of God. Everything. Concepts that we really struggle with, evil, murder, so on and so on, down those lines, war. Everything is of God. Nothing cannot not be. We say that can't be of God. So here I am going, oh my gosh, throw that back in the cave. Oh, get rid of that thing. And then I go, oh, wait a second. Why? And I'd been thinking about it, and I went, oh yeah, here I am, thinking about expectation, and I'm calling my experiences into me, saying, what's next, guides? What's next? Knowing that it might be something that bumps up against my preferences that I would rather not have bumped up against, right? And so this was one of them, and I went, far out, this is fantastic. Changed my perspective immediately. I was like, yeah, I still think that is just god-awful, because I had a picture in my head.
It's upside down, Kat.
Oh,
No, really.
Doesn't make any difference.
Is it?
oh, is it? That's one thing about dirty pours, is you can put them any way you want.
Yeah, there you go.
Here the meteorites are striking Earth. Here they're jellyfish. Here they're flowers coming out of the bush. I don't know. That's a beautiful thing about art, is that it is absolutely subjective. And art will always reveal your preferences. It's a good exercise to say, why do I not like that? Why do I like that? We rarely look at what we like, right? So this was just, this was so amazing for me to look at and say, why? My brain orients it this way, because I had this technique in mind. I was going to make these jellyfish swimming through the ocean. It was just going to be gorgeous. And then I got that. It's nowhere close, trust me. And I went, okay, so why would it, and like, how did it affect me? How did it influence me for the rest of that class? After I made this, I was just like, oh dear God, everybody's going to see just how horrible this is, and they're going to think these thoughts of me. Blah, blah, blah. We project. We think that everybody else is going to look at it in the same way and think the same horrible thoughts that we're beating ourselves up with in the moment.
She wouldn't even take it home forever and ever.
Well, that's when I had family members transition. It's a convenient excuse. But I thought about it the whole time, because then it lodged itself in my mind of, you know, under the category of, you know. And I thought, oh, that's great. Anything that falls into that category, I know to look at it. And I'm willing to, because then I get all excited of like, oh my gosh, look at, I still have, you know, my stuff still stinks. Woo! Something to learn. And so I figured I'd tattle on myself, and this is the best example of expectation, you know, that I could think of. And so I'm like, okay, well, how did it affect me the rest of the class? I did not enjoy the rest of that class as I had previous classes, because I was so busy. You know, our teenage selves do this. You can watch teenagers do this. They're like, everybody can see my zit. It's like the size of Mount Vesuvius. Everybody's looking at my zit. And we're all like, what? What zit?
Where?
Where? Whatever. You know, but we as teenagers, we just obsess about that. Oh my gosh. You know, what I think everybody has to be thinking, and it's going to be true, and it's just going to... And so we start to affect the rest of the day. Oh my God, I couldn't get my eyebrows on right. Everybody's gonna be thinking I'm, you know, something else. So it starts to color everything you do from that point on if you listen to it and believe it and accept it as a truth. And then the effect was, I was like, I'm gonna burn it, I'm gonna paint over it, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I went, wait a second, what was my sigil? Word, I am word. I went, oh, And because of how I've interacted with the guide's teachings and everything, I immediately went, this is the best lesson ever. And I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna just dig into it. And I'm gonna hang this on my wall forever and ever and ever. Until I get to the point where I no longer go, ugh. Where I've released that judgment. And then beyond that, I'm like, this is a great example of that. It's a great story to tell, to share with other people. But it's like, but why did I think of this? And I started dialing back. Okay, so I assumed that, now this is not a bragging moment, but usually when whatever I do, a new thing, I can do pretty good, no matter what it is. I just happen to have that capacity. Don't know why. So I assumed this was not my first rodeo, and I assumed that because I had educated myself to this particular technique that I could pull it off. Because I've got this history that says I can pull off stuff pretty well every time, even if it's something new. Not expert, but you know, it's like, hey, that's pretty good. And so I have this belief in that skill set, and I have this belief in that ability. And it's like, well, it's been well informed. I have memories. I have evidence. I have evidence that says these dirty pores can be amazing and fantastic. And you can create all kinds of great and wonderful stuff, and people will just laud you. Oh, look at your ability. You know? And of course our ego goes, oh, yes, I'm so great. So, and this was from the same day that I did this other dirty pour. And this was another mandala class from Carrie's, right? So I've got this history, and I've got an art portfolio that I could have drug in here too, and you can see the artwork that I was capable of doing, even as a kid. That doesn't even look anywhere near this, right? So I've got this history in my head and these memories, and I thought, what does every great artist out there say? Well, I didn't do this overnight. I've had some real doozies. I've had stuff that, yeah, I did burn or paint over and mistakes and this and that. No matter how good you are, no matter how perfected you appear to be in anything, you've had experiences that showed you that you needed to keep trying, or that you needed to let go of whatever your expectations were. Because I got some feedback on this that people were like, that's amazing. I really like that. I liked that the best out of all the other ones. And I'm sitting there going, because of my expectation that I was holding on to, I was like, my God, they're so polite. And I'm getting the pity politeness, right? So I can't see genuine interest and genuine appreciation, because I'm busy over here holding fast, thinking that just because it went through my head, it's true. We see a lot of that these days where people think that it's my thought, therefore it is God's truth. And you're like, oh. If it was, everybody would be holding fast to that same idea. So every time you have your preferences bumped into, you get an awesome opportunity to say, why do I not like this? Is there at least one person on the entire planet that could possibly think differently? Answer to that is a guaranteed yes. Bring it to me. I'll give you a different perspective. I got a lot of experience at the what if game. So, and this too, I mean, one thing that we expect we're gonna have some kind of big experience, that our spiritual path, we expect the spiritual path to be this thing that's very delineated. We're gonna know our purpose. We're gonna have all kinds of, we have all these expectations of what all of that means. And I've heard from more than one source that there is no path. There's just the now. I'm not as versed in Course in Miracles, but every time Lydia gets up and reads something, I'm all like, oh yeah, I've heard that from like the guides, I've heard that from the Buddhism, I've heard that from this source and this source. The truth of our purpose and our service and who we are and what we are really runs through so many different teachings out there and so many different sources, and we can get it even in the most mundane of moments too. Because we like to separate out spiritual, the world, and the mundane world. But in truth, all that is all of it. As you're doing the dishes, making a painting, whatever, what is your vibration? What is your state of being? Now, while you're not paying attention to it, it's going to show you the truth of your being and your vibration. When you're being all spiritual, you're focused on it. So you're like, I'm fulfilling the expectations of a spiritual role, and I'm fulfilling you don't realize you're doing that. But your state of being is your state of being all the time. And so even in these mundane situations, they're going to show up the best in the mundane situations because you're not paying attention. You're not trying to fulfill your expectation of what it is to be spiritual and good and enlightened and all that. You're being real to where you're at in the moment with your personality self. And if you've got that observer mind functioning, and it kicks in and it goes, red flag, this right here, red flag. I didn't learn anything spiritual from those. Nothing. Why? Because I said, oh, these things, they're so beautiful and they're so lovely, and everybody gave me such praise and accolade. It's perfect. But over here, I was like, oh, red flag. I'm like, oh, this is the good stuff. If we want to qualify it, I'm like, this gave me such a great lesson. And I've been thinking on it and figuring out. It's like, oh, all these different beliefs that would not have surfaced if I didn't have this mundane experience of, just a daily in the life of. You can have a mundane experience just doing the dishes, but your state of being is going to reveal. It's like, what are you thinking while you're doing those dishes? Are you getting in a mood because you're not really monitoring your own thoughts? What are you worrying about? What are you stressing about? What are you remembering? Memory is such a tricky one too. That'd be a good topic. of how your memories are just a memory of the last time you remembered it. Your mind is not a filing cabinet, and it gets recorded with the perspective and the vibration of where you were at in the moment that you put that memory in there to begin with. And we remember so more easily the vibration and the feeling of that memory. And then every time you remember it, your brain starts to edit it towards its preferences. I really want to believe that that person was a complete schmuck. And so every time you remember that experience, it gets a little embellished towards making that person an even bigger schmuck. And I would have said this, and I would have did that. And if it ever happens again, you know. But it's like, in that moment, if you can start saying, okay, I want to be, I'm willing to be aware when I start doing these things. And it's like, oh. And the great thing is that when you express it as a willingness, you make a claim. I am willing to see where I am in expectation. I am word through this intention. Word, I am word. That would be the guides. They're like, whatever claim you want to make, and then you finish it up with their saying, which is just to affirm that this is going to be the action of all that is, the energy of the action of all that is coming at me. I am out there, and I am actively saying, I want to. I am willing to. And then you be an allowance of it. And you can start to reveal your expectations. You can start to reveal what you're holding in darkness. And then you can start to, like me, I'm like, ugh. You know, you get in that, ugh. Oh. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another one floating to the surface. You know, making a mess in my own pool. Right? And it's like, oh, but that's mine, which means I can do something about it. Because you are only in authority over what's going on in here, in your world. That's the only authority you have. Other people can reveal to you what's going on with you. Perhaps they're revealing what's going on within them. But it gives you some good food for thought to explore that. Is this mine? Is this theirs? Are we co-creating? We're definitely co-creating. So why is this experience this way? How can I react to it? How did I react to it? What can be different? And you know, if you want to focus on expectations, it's like, why did I expect them to behave differently? Yeah. There should have been more than one person in here laughing out loud. They're like, oh yeah, I've been there, done that. And then you get mad and you blame them. You're the one with the expectation. They're doing as they do. You know, and there's spiritual traps with this too. Everybody's like, I'm a healer. I'm going to fix them. I'm going to heal them of their malady. Or I'm going to do my thing and they will heal themselves of their malady. Why would you have that expectation? What if their malady or whatever is exactly what they require at their soul level for their own evolution and growth? You know, so you can hold people in love and in compassion. And as I watched my beautiful mother-in-law slip away, I just sat there and I said, this has to happen. This is the natural course of things. And I hope on the other side she comes back and says hi. But I just held her in love and in compassion. I wanted to just anchor that vibration into the room so that she could pass being bathed in love, compassion, safety. I love it when Ram Dass, if you ever listen to his stuff, he's like, death is the safest thing ever. Absolutely hilarious. So I was just making sure I just wanted her to be comfortable. I wanted her to feel safe. She knew she was loved because my husband and I were the last people that she saw 3 hours before she passed. And the last thing she said, so perfectly clear, was thank you for coming. because we went and visited her in hospice. And I didn't get emotional about it until just now. So it's kind of like, didn't expect that. So it's like, oh, whew. Oh yeah. I've got very little shame left. Which is why I can bring this forward and go, oh my gosh, I'm gonna tell on myself. Because so much we hold an idea, but we hold it as such dire truth, and we just don't want to let go of it. And that's okay. Don't beat yourself over that either. Things come forward. Things come forward with your willingness, with your allowance. They also come forward with the perfect timing and synchronicities, and sometimes it's like we're waiting for this particular experience to catch your attention, this particular person to catch your attention. So it's gonna come out, and you might think, okay, one and it's done. I got that expectation, that belief nailed. Bam. All right. Next experience shows you just a slightly different aspect of it. Because all of these, the reason it's such a gray area to have these expectations and assumptions and the history that we have concocted of who we are and what we are and what's expected of us, and then all these beliefs that back it up, and we're like, but I have evidence that, all of that. There goes my train. Dang it, squirrel. Oh, and that happens a lot too for me lately here. Oh, good grief. Where was I?
Going back.
It's almost like a test.
Yeah.
I used to teach at college. Pop quiz. What was I talking about? So wherever that flittered off to was meant to be. So anytime you have an expectation, and if you're struggling with it, just let it be. Find somebody you can talk to. And that's one thing I usually encourage at the end of my talks, is that there are so many fabulous people here that are doing their own forms of shadow work, that are still dedicated. I'm still dedicated to it and open to learning all and exploring and having more of this stuff come forward. There's so many people here in our group to talk to. And you might not talk to the same person about the same issue. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's really good to let it out of you, let it hit the light, let it hit the air, let somebody else be vulnerable, let somebody else see you and say, I need help looking at this. Why do I feel this way? Why do I believe this way? Why did I react this way? Why did this situation go sideways? Yeah, and let other people in to support you. And that's one thing that's so beautiful about this community, is that it is very supporting, very loving, very compassionate. And I'm dedicated to shadow work. I mean, it's just one way to define your quote-unquote spiritual path. So you can get to the point of realizing it's not a path, it's just how you are, how you be, the experiences that come up constantly. So I have no problem helping people discover their own floaters, right? And I've had people that have come to Akashic readings too, that they didn't like what they heard. They were expecting something fluffy and nice, and it's like, that's soul level truth. And you might need to be told that your thought, your belief is the obstacle, not the other person, not the this or that. It's in you. So, and I'm gonna, and here's my other plug for myself. Lena, beautiful lady, inspired me to try to do Akashic readings as speed readings. So it'd be one question, maybe 10, 15 minutes. So if there's anybody who is wanting to get a soul level truth, come and see me. Help me practice. It's just practice. So I can see if it actually does, if I can make it function that quickly. Because normally it's 30 to 45 to 60-minute readings. So with that, any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to say, when you were talking about expectations, last night before, I used to talk to my speaker on my phone, and it would tell what time to wake me up. Well, it won't do that anymore. So anyhow, time for me to get up this morning, I heard that little ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. That's an expectation, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, if you set an alarm and you expect it to go off and it doesn't, how does that affect the rest of your day if you hold on to that and beat yourself up over
At
it?
the exact right time,
Mhm.
I heard it in my brain.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people, they're like, I don't even need to set an alarm because I have such a strong expectation that I'm going to get up at the right time when I need to.
I don't usually have that expectation.
Yeah, I don't usually have that experience either. Some mornings I'm like,
I like to sleep a
oh.
lot.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being resurrected out of a grave some mornings, but, so yeah, yes.
Do you remember your intention on the other two?
I actually think was smart enough to write it down. I am worthy. I am love. This one's I am love. This one said, hand me my butt to me, please. Because when you call in, when you say word, I am word, and when you say I am willing and I'm ready, just because you're willing and you're ready doesn't mean that you're going to like what comes down the pike.
Amen.
And a lot of people are like, it doesn't look like it the way I wanted it to look, and it doesn't feel fluffy and nice and all spiritual and godlike. And it's like, well, if you ever look at the yin and yang symbol, the light and the dark, and there's a little spot of dark in the light, and there's a little spot of light in the dark, they look separate, but if you really sit down and ponder that and think about all that is all that is, all of it. And if you look at it, that is a symbol that's in motion. If you really look at it, it looks like if you were to let it go, that it would just be swirling. The light and the dark chasing each other, a little bit of the dark and the light, a little bit of light and the dark. You get what you expect what you get. But it's all together. It's all of it. Yes?
I had that happen when I came here the first time several weeks ago, just 4 to 7 weeks ago. This isn't like any church I've ever been to.
Yeah. We will blow your mind here.
And all of those expectations kept running around and around and around. And humility is a very scary thing, and it's where all the light is to observe what it is that I was doing. And that observer you're talking about is a tricky one to get a hold of, and to realize that we do have that ability to go to that higher power and see what's actually going on. But humility, I think, allowed me to see those expectations, and then coming back and being open-minded and reminding myself that how do I allow others to be who they are? Or how do I allow others to have their own beliefs and expectations based on their own experiences?
Yeah.
Kind of like, how do I get out of the way of that? And then I started to see the diversity here. It's like, okay, wait a minute, that's not what I expect, but what is it? Is there anything I'm supposed to be learning? Which is really a good thought.
Yeah.
Thank you for the message today. And I have been through Debbie Ford's The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And one of the experiences she says in there is she thought she had arrived and had looked at all her dark side. And one lady said, had her hand up in a workshop and said, well, you're a bitch.
Fantastic.
And she thought, oh my God, how did she know that? How did she find out so fast? And then she started doing some extra work, which is talking about these uncomfortable things that you're talking about
Yeah,
that we
and
don't.
sometimes we discount when somebody calls us out on our stuff, and we'll say, oh, well, that's because that person is da-da-da, or they don't know. I mean, the personality self, the ego will rationalize like a pro.
So thanks for the message and the
Yeah.
reminder. It's very good. Yeah.
Good. And
What I was thinking about when you were talking about affect and you were talking about effect, okay? And affect, and you got A on the beginning of it. Well, A has a symbol and it looks like it's pregnant, right? So it's like affect or affect, but then when you got an E, it's a swirl out effect. So the difference between the A and the E is
well, yeah. So how's it influencing you? So it's like
you're swirling it out.
what is this affecting, and what is it creating?
This is
Yeah.
the small E and small A.
Yeah,
right?
small E and small A.
Yes.
Yeah, so the small A looks like, like something in the womb, and it's like, oh, you're creating. What are you creating? And then the effect is, well, I threw it out there, and then it came back.
Well, it's also Pluto and it could be Jupiter.
Well, I've had so many people are like, can just a person be in retrograde? And I'm like, I feel you. So that's been a lot of topics of conversation the past month and a half. So, all right. Any other questions? I'm free to entertain them below and to offer to people the experience of wording. To have you have me word for you, which is a teaching of the guides, but it's a witnessing of you in your higher vibration. And if anybody's interested in that, I can let you have the experience of having the guides witnessing of that too. Because that's not something I've ever brought up before, because the guides don't like, they say don't turn this into religion, and don't proselytize about it. So, but I word all the time quietly for you guys, all the time. I was doing it while Carmen was singing. So, but just to witness and hold everybody in truth and love and compassion and in their beauty for where you are at right now, which is perfectly appropriate. Perfect, whole, and complete, even if you don't expect it to look the way it looks. It's still perfect, whole, and complete, regardless of your expectations. All right, thank you.
Please, another round of applause for Kat. That was amazing. I wanted to thank Mark for his comments about being open-minded, and it's different here. For those of you that may not know, our motto is one spirit, many paths. We are very eclectic here, and we embrace, as if you can see our little altar back here, we embrace the masters, and many of us, we're all on a different path, because no two people do it the same way. That's just not the reality. So I wanted to mention that. All right, this is the time when we receive for the center. So, Ruth?